Hey, tonight we are going to explore the sacred and silent world of 12th century monastic life. Imagine yourself transported across the veil of time to an age where devotion was measured not just in prayer, but in the deliberate emptying of one's plate. The stone-walled abbeys harboring shadows and whispers of divine connection. The cold dawn rising over manuscript-filled scriptoriums. The distant chanting that marks each hour like the heartbeat of eternity. This is the world of medieval asceticism, where hunger was not feared but embraced as a path to spiritual clarity, where the body's needs were secondary to the soul's journey. Tonight, you'll walk in the soft leather shoes of those who chose a different kind of fullness. If you're enjoying these historical journeys into sleep, I'd be so grateful if you'd consider subscribing to our channel. Your support means we can continue crafting these calming historical escapes for those restless nights. And I'm curious, have you ever tried fasting for any reason, spiritual or otherwise? How did your body respond to that experience? Now dim your lights, nestle deeper into your pillow, and let the modern world fade away as we step back into the hushed reverence of the 12th century. The abbey walls are waiting to embrace you in their timeless quiet. The bell tolls 3 times in the darkness, its bronze voice reverberating through the stone corridors of Fontevraud Abbey. You stir beneath the rough woolen blanket, your body already knowing what to do before your mind fully wakes. This is the hour of matins, the first prayer of the day, though day is still hours from arriving. Around you, other figures rise from their narrow pallets, your sisters in devotion, though in the darkness they appear more as gentle ghosts than women of flesh. Your bare feet find the cold stone floor, a shock that serves as both penance and awakening. The dormitory is unheated, and your breath forms visible clouds in the February air. You've been here for 3 months now, observing the ways of these Benedictine nuns. Yet your body still protests the early rising, the cold, and most persistently, the hunger that has become your constant companion. It is Quadragesima, the 40 days of Lent, and the already austere diet of the abbey has become sparser still. Yesterday, you consumed only a small portion of dark bread, a few sips of watered wine, and a thin vegetable pottage that did little to quiet the growling of your stomach. Today promises the same, though the thought provides no comfort as you reach for your habit, layering the linen shift beneath the heavy black wool that will shield you somewhat from the biting cold. Sister Agnes, an elderly nun who has spent 60 of her 75 years within these walls, moves with practiced efficiency beside you. Her face, lined with decades of pre-dawn risings, betrays no discomfort. Her stomach does not audibly protest as yours, though she has mastered what you are still struggling to learn, the art of finding nourishment beyond food, sustenance beyond the physical. Remember, she whispers, her voice barely disturbing the sacred silence of the hour, hunger brings clarity. Each pang is a reminder of Christ's suffering. Embrace it as a blessing, not a burden. You nod in acknowledgement, though your modern sensibilities still rebel against this concept. In your time, fasting is occasionally practiced, but rarely with such rigor or spiritual intent. These women view their bodies not as temples to be pampered, but as obstacles to overcome in the pursuit of divine communion. The dormitory empties as the sisters file out, each taking their place in the procession. Moving toward the chapel, you follow, your footsteps echoing softly against the worn stone path. The stars above are crystalline in their clarity, pinpricks of light in the velvet darkness that still blankets the countryside. The air is sharp with frost, filling your lungs with an icy purity that momentarily distracts from your hunger. Inside the chapel, candles flicker in iron holders, casting elongated shadows across the walls. The smell of beeswax mingles with cold stone and incense, a scent that has become synonymous with these pre-dawn hours. The abbess's mother, Heloise, stands tall despite her years, her voice clear and unwavering as she begins the first psalm. The Latin words flow around you, familiar now after months of repetition, though their deeper meanings sometimes remain elusive. You take your place among the choir, your voice joining the others in the ancient melodies that have been sung within these walls for generations. The harmony creates something larger than any individual, a tapestry of sound that seems to rise to the vaulted ceiling and beyond. For a moment, caught in this communal act of worship, you forget your empty stomach, your cold feet, the early hour. This, you realize, is part of the purpose to transcend physical discomfort through devotion. The service continues for nearly 2 hours, moving through prayers, psalms, readings from the Rule of Saint Benedict, and moments of contemplative silence. Standing for such duration would be challenging even with a full stomach. With emptiness gnawing at you, it becomes an exercise in endurance. You notice how Sister Agnes, despite her age, remains perfectly still during the long readings, while you find yourself shifting your weight from one foot to the other, seeking relief that never fully comes. When Matins finally concludes, there is no return to the warmth of bed. Instead, the community moves to the chapter house for the daily reading of a chapter from the Rule, followed by confession of faults and discussion of abbey business. You sit on the hard wooden bench, trying to focus on Mother Heloise's words, rather than the growing discomfort in your midsection. Today we contemplate the virtue of temperance, she intones, her eyes moving across the gathered sisters. In this holy season, we deny our bodies to feed our souls. Remember that when Eve ate the forbidden fruit, she chose physical satisfaction over obedience. In our fast, we reverse this ancient error. The morning progresses with glacial slowness. After chapter comes prime, another liturgical hour of prayer, followed by a period of work. For you, this means joining several sisters in the scriptorium, where manuscripts are copied with painstaking precision. In your time observing this practice, you've gained immense respect for the concentration it requires. Today, however, with your stomach occasionally emitting embarrassing sounds, focus proves elusive. Sister Beatrice, the Abbey's most skilled illuminator, notices your distraction. The hunger will pass, she says quietly, not looking up from the delicate gold leaf she is applying to a capital letter. After a time, it becomes a companion rather than an adversary. How long did that take for you? You ask, grateful for the rare moment of conversation in a day structured around silence. She considers this, her brush hovering above the parchment. Perhaps 3 years, she finally says, with the ghost of a smile. But I was particularly attached to the pleasures of the table before taking my vows. This does not provide the encouragement you had hoped for. 3 years to become accustomed to constant hunger seems an eternity. By midday, when the bell sounds for sext, the 6th hour of prayer, your hunger has actually begun to recede, replaced by a peculiar lightness. Your movements feel deliberate, and colors seem somehow more vivid. The blue of the Madonna's robe in the chapel fresco, the golden glow of candlelight on stone. Sister Agnes had mentioned this phenomenon, calling it the clarity of emptiness. But you had been skeptical until experiencing it yourself. Following sext comes the day's main meal, though meal seems a generous term for what is offered during Lent. you file into the refectory with the other sisters, taking your place at the long wooden table. No one speaks. Instead, a designated sister reads aloud from the writings of St. Augustine while the others eat. Today's fare is a piece of coarse bread approximately the size of your palm, a small portion of beans cooked with herbs but no fat, and a cup of watered wine. You notice that some of the older nuns take even less than what is offered, leaving portions of their already meager allowance untouched. This voluntary additional sacrifice is not required but is practiced by many as a form of personal devotion. Sister Agnes catches your eye as she breaks her bread in half, wrapping one portion in a clean cloth to give later to a poor woman who comes to the abbey gate each evening. The food, simple as it is, awakens your hunger once more. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, practicing the mindfulness that Mother Heloise has encouraged. The bread is dense and slightly sour, the beans creamy and fragrant with rosemary from the abbey garden. In modern times, this meal would hardly register as adequate, but here, in this 12th century refectory, it is received with genuine gratitude. The afternoon brings more work, this time in the herb garden where spring plantings are beginning despite the lingering cold. The physical labor demands energy that your sparse meal hasn't provided, and you feel a growing weakness in your limbs as you help turn the soil in preparation for medicinal herbs that will later stock the abbey's infirmary. The body is wise. Sister Matilda, the infirmarian, tells you as she notices your labored movements. It knows how to draw on stored resources when fresh nourishment is limited. The fat beneath our skin, the strongest of our muscles, these become food when bread is scarce. You think of how differently your contemporaries view body fat as something to be eliminated rather than a reserve for times of need. These women, with their understanding of the body as both sacred vessel and temporary housing, seem to hold a more practical and less judgmental perspective on physical form. The bell rings for none, the 9th hour of prayer, providing a welcome respite from the physical labor. As you stand in your place in chapel, a wave of dizziness passes over you, causing you to sway slightly. Sister Agnes steadies you with a gentle hand on your elbow, her touch both supportive and admonishing. Weakness is expected, but allowing it to disrupt the communal prayer is discouraged. After none, there is time for study or contemplative reading. You choose to sit in the cloister garden where the first crocuses are pushing through the cold. Earth. The book in your hands is a collection of writings by Hildegard of Bingen, a visionary abbess whose work is admired even in this abbey affiliated with a different order. The words swim before your eyes, occasionally, your concentration fractured by the persistent emptiness in your stomach. A paragraph catches your attention. The body is the soul's dwelling place, and the nourishment we deny it in fasting creates space for divine visitation. You consider this concept so foreign to modern thinking, yet central to the medieval understanding of physicality and spirituality. These women do not hate their bodies. Rather, they seek to transform them through disciplined denial into more receptive vessels for divine experience. The bell for Vespers draws you from your contemplation as the sun begins its descent toward the horizon. The evening prayer has a different quality than those of the morning and afternoon, a gentle winding down, a preparation for the coming night. The voices of the sisters seem especially harmonious in this hour, their Latin chants flowing with practiced precision. After Vespers comes the evening collation, a light repast even in ordinary times, and particularly minimal during Lent. Tonight, it consists only of a small cup of herb-infused water, and a few spoonfuls of cooked apples, preserved from the autumn harvest. The sweetness of the fruit tastes almost shocking after a day of bland fare, and you savor the simple pleasure it provides. Sister Agnes notices your enjoyment. When we deny ourselves regular satisfaction, she murmurs, we discover extraordinary pleasure in simple things. The apple tastes sweeter, the spring water more refreshing, the moment of rest more profound. The final liturgical hour of the day, Compline, arrives as darkness falls completely. This night prayer has a particular intimacy, a gentle quality that prepares the community for the great silence that will last until after matins the following day. The abbess sprinkles each sister with holy water as you file out of the chapel, a symbolic cleansing before rest. In the dormitory, you settle onto your pallet, pulling the woolen blanket around you against the night chill. Your stomach growls insistently, and you wonder how sleep will come with such discomfort. Sister Beatrice, whose bed is adjacent to yours, notices your restlessness. Focus on your breathing, she whispers, breaking the great silence momentarily to offer this advice. When the hunger pains come, breathe into them rather than resisting. You try this technique, drawing deliberate breaths that expand your diaphragm fully before slowly releasing. To your surprise, it helps not eliminating the hunger but changing your relationship to it. The sensation becomes something observed rather than something suffered. As you lie in the darkness, listening to the measured breathing of 24 women around you, you reflect on what you've learned in this single day of medieval monastic fasting. The physical challenge has been considerable. The early rising, the constant hunger, the physical labor performed with minimal caloric intake. Yet something else has emerged alongside the discomfort, a heightened awareness, a peculiar clarity that comes from operating at the edges of your physical resources. These women choose this life not as punishment, but as pathway. They believe that by systematically denying the body's most basic desires, they create space for something else to flourish. Whether one shares their spiritual framework or not, the discipline they maintain is remarkable. Day after day, season after season, year after year, they follow this pattern of intentional limitation, finding within it not deprivation but richness. Your modern perspective has been shaped by abundance, by the assumption that more is better and that comfort is a reasonable goal. Here, in this 12th century abbey, those values are inverted. Limitation is seen as opportunity. Discomfort is viewed as teacher. Hunger becomes not an emergency to be addressed, but a state to be explored. Sleep begins to overtake you finally, your thoughts growing less coherent as your body surrenders to exhaustion. Tomorrow will bring another day of the same, the early rising, the hours of prayer, the minimal nourishment, the physical work. The cycle will continue for the 40 days of Lent. Each day a deliberate echo of Christ's desert fast. You wouldn't last a day fasting with a 12th century nun, and yet you just have. One day down, 39 to go, in the darkness of the dormitory, surrounded by women who have made this practice their life's work. You drift toward sleep with a new appreciation for the strength that lies in voluntary weakness, the fullness that can be found in emptiness. Morning comes too soon. The bells toll, pulling you from dreams of feasts you cannot eat. Your body feels different. Not stronger certainly, but somehow more present, more attuned to its own processes. The hunger remains, a constant companion that will walk with you through the coming hours. Sister Agnes is already dressed when you open your eyes, her movements economical and purposeful. How did you sleep? she asks, keeping her voice low to respect the morning quiet. Better than I expected, you admit, surprised to find this true. She nods as if this is natural. The body eventually surrenders its protests when it realizes they will not be heeded. This is true of hunger, cold, fatigue, all the discomforts we face. As you rise to begin another day of prayer, work, and intentional hunger, you wonder about the women around you, what brought each of them to this life of restriction and regularity. For some, it was surely family decision rather than personal choice. Younger daughters sent to convents when dowries couldn't be arranged. Others came by genuine vocation, feeling called to this communal life of devotion. Regardless of how they arrive, they have adapted to conditions that most modern people would find intolerable. The Matins bell echoes through the dormitory, calling all to the first office of the day. You join the procession of black-robed figures moving through the darkness toward the chapel, your empty stomach no longer your primary focus. There is a rhythm to this life that has begun, ever so slightly, to carry you along with it. In the chapel, candlelight flickers across ancient stone walls. Voices rise and chant, creating harmonies that have remained unchanged for centuries. The smell of beeswax and incense enfolds you like an invisible embrace. For a moment, suspended in this timeless ritual, the hunger in your belly becomes just one sensation among many, noted but not dominant. You realize that these women haven't mastered fasting because they don't feel hunger. They feel it as keenly. As you do, their mastery lies in having built a life where hunger is given context and meaning beyond physical discomfort. In their understanding, an empty stomach creates capacity for spiritual fullness. Whether one accepts their theological framework or not, there is something profound in this inversion of physical desire into spiritual practice. The Abbey offers a radically different approach to the body and its needs. Not denial for denial's sake, but limitation in service of something these women value more highly. As the day opens before you with its structured hours of prayer, work, and minimal sustenance, you find yourself wondering what would happen if you stayed beyond this one experimental day. Would your body eventually adapt, as Sister Agnes suggests? Would you discover the clarity she speaks of with such certainty? Would the hunger pangs that now distract you eventually become signposts toward the transcendence these women seek? The questions remain unanswered as you take your place among the choir, your voice joining theirs in ancient psalms sung by countless women before you in this very space. The abbey walls hold centuries of devotion, of purposeful hunger, of women finding strength in voluntary weakness. For now, you are part of this continuum, experiencing in your own body the practices that shaped medieval spirituality. Your stomach growls softly during a moment of silence. Sister Beatrice meets your eyes. Briefly, a hint of understanding in her gaze. She too was once new to this. She too once counted the hours between sparse meals. Now she moves through the rhythms of monastic life with practiced grace, her focus rarely disturbed by physical discomfort. Perhaps this is the most profound lesson of your time with these 12th-century nuns. Not that you couldn't last a day in their fasting regimen, though that was your initial concern. But that lasting is not the point. The point is the transformation that occurs through voluntary limitation. The awareness that grows when physical needs are deliberately unmet. These women don't endure hunger. They embrace it as teacher and companion on a spiritual journey you are only beginning to understand. Outside the chapel window, dawn begins to break over the abbey walls. Another day of prayer, work, and intentional hunger awaits. Your body may protest, but something else within you has awakened to the possibility that these medieval women, with their ascetic practices and rigorous devotion, might possess wisdom that your time of abundance has forgotten. The abyss signals for the Gloria, and all voices rise in praise. Hungry and tired as you are, yours joins them, finding strength you didn't know you possessed. One day down, the journey continues. As you move through the morning prayers, your mind drifts occasionally to the physical sensations of your body. The stone floor beneath your knees during prostration feels particularly unyielding today. The cold air seems to find its way through your woolen habit more persistently. These discomforts, minor though they might be individually, compound with your hunger to create a symphony of physical protest that requires continuous effort to ignore. Sister Agnes notices your distraction during the reading from Psalm 42. When the body shouts, she whispers as you file out of the chapel. The soul must shout louder. This is the discipline. The morning unfolds much like the previous day: chapter meeting, prime prayers, then work in the scriptorium. Today, however, you notice subtle differences in your experience. The hunger, still present, has somehow receded in importance. Exists as background rather than foreground in your awareness. The dizziness comes less frequently. Your hands, copying a passage from Augustine's Confessions, move with greater steadiness. The body adapts quickly, Sister Beatrice observes, noticing your improved concentration. It is the mind that resists change most stubbornly. By midday, you've settled into a peculiar state that feels neither like hunger nor satiety, but something altogether different. Your movements have slowed, becoming more deliberate. Colors appear sharper, sounds more distinct. During sext prayers, the polyphonic chanting seems to physically move through your body like gentle waves. At the midday meal, you receive your portion of bread and beans with genuine gratitude rather than the disappointment you felt yesterday at its meagerness. Each bite is consumed with complete attention, revealing flavors and textures you missed before. The experience reminds you of stories you've heard about mindfulness practices. Though these medieval women would use different terminology to describe their approach to eating, afternoon work takes you to the infirmary, where you assist Sister Matilda in preparing herbal remedies. The scent of dried herbs, lavender, sage, rosemary, thyme fills the small room. Sister Matilda explains each preparation with scientific precision that seems centuries ahead of its time. The body seeks balance, she explains, as she measures careful portions of dried chamomile for a sleeping tisane. When we fast, we create temporary imbalance that the body must address. This awakens healing capacities that lie dormant when we exist in constant comfort. You think of modern, intermittent fasting practices, promoted for their health benefits. These medieval women, operating from entirely different premises, arrived at similar practices. Their goal was spiritual rather than physical enhancement. Yet the physiological effects would be comparable as evening approaches, bringing Vespers and then the sparse collation. You find yourself less preoccupied with thoughts of food than you were the previous day. The rhythm of the hours has begun to carry you, each activity flowing naturally into the next. Prayer, work, study, brief rest. The pattern provides structure that somehow makes the physical challenge more manageable. In the quiet moments before Compline, you sit in the cloister garden watching the last light fade from the sky. Sister Agnes joins you, her wooden rosary beads clicking softly between her fingers as she prays. You seem more at peace today, she observes during a pause in her devotions. I think I'm beginning to understand. you reply, though the understanding you've reached is difficult to articulate. It has something to do with the deliberate nature of the discomfort these women embrace, the purpose that infuses their denial. They do not simply endure hunger. They transform it into spiritual practice through intention and communal support. Sister Agnes nods, as if she can follow your unspoken thoughts. The modern world fears hunger, she says, though of course she has no actual knowledge of your time. We welcome it as messenger. It reminds us of our dependence, our fragility, our need for sustenance beyond what bread alone can provide. The bell calls you both to Compline, the final prayers before the great silence descends. Tonight, the familiar words wash over you differently. Your hunger has become a lens through which the ancient texts take on new meaning. As you lie on your pallet later, waiting for sleep to come, you consider what you've learned from these women and their practices. Their fasting is not merely absence of food, but presence of intention. They have created a life where physical limitation serves spiritual expansion. In your world of abundance and immediate gratification, there might be wisdom to recover from their disciplined approach to bodily needs. Sleep comes more easily tonight, your body beginning to adjust to its new patterns of nourishment and activity. In the space between wakefulness and dreaming, you find yourself grateful for this glimpse into a way of being that challenges your assumptions about necessity and desire, about hunger and satisfaction. These 12th century nuns have shown you that lasting a day in their fasting regimen is not merely a test of physical endurance, but an invitation to a different kind of awareness. As consciousness fades, you realize that while you may not choose their path of perpetual asceticism, there is much to learn from their intentional relationship with hunger, and the wisdom that emerges from voluntary limitation. As this chapter closes its eyes, another tale begins to stir in the shadows of time, where ancient stones whisper secrets of devotion and sacrifice that the modern world has all but forgotten. Beneath stone walls, where time moves by candlelight, ancient wisdom blooms in neat rows of green. The abbey gardens hold secrets passed through generations of devoted hands. Each plant a whispered prayer, each remedy a gift from heaven. Here, among the healing herbs, you will discover the quiet power of those who healed with faith and nature intertwined. You awaken to the gentle toll of bells, their bronze voices drifting across the valley like morning mist. The sun has not yet risen, but the sky holds that peculiar luminescence that precedes dawn in these northern lands. Through the narrow window of your guest chamber in the abbey's visitor quarters, you can see stars still pricking the fading night. The stone beneath your feet radiates a profound coolness as you rise from your simple straw pallet. Yesterday, you arrived at this remote Benedictine abbey, nestled in a valley surrounded by ancient forests, seeking knowledge of their famed healing, gardens, and herbal wisdom. The guest master, an elderly nun named Sister Agnes, explained that you would be permitted to observe their daily routines and garden work, a rare privilege for an outsider. We rise at the hour of matins, she had explained, in her soft, weathered voice, before the sun greets the day. You dress in the simple woolen garments provided to visitors, the fabric rough but honest against your skin. The candlelight throws gentle shadows across the whitewashed walls as you prepare yourself. From somewhere deep within the abbey, voices rise and chant, the Latin phrases flowing like water over smooth stones. The sound draws you forward. The corridor outside your chamber is dimly lit by oil lamps set in wall niches. Their small flames dance as you pass, creating a procession of shadows that follow your steps. The stone floor has been worn smooth by centuries of devotion. countless feet having traced this same path toward prayer. You follow the distant voices until you reach the entrance to the chapel. You pause at the threshold, not wishing to disturb the sacred ritual. Inside, 24 nuns stand in their choir stalls, their black habits rendering them nearly invisible in the pre-dawn darkness. Only their faces, pale ovals illuminated by candlelight, seem to float in the gloom. Their voices rise and fall in perfect unison, reciting prayers that have remained unchanged for centuries. Sister Agnes appears silently at your side, startling you with her noiseless approach. "We begin each day by filling our spirits," she whispers, "before we tend to the needs of the body. After Lauds, we break our fast, and then the work begins." Her eyes, bright despite her advanced years, regard you with gentle curiosity. "You have come to learn about our medicines." You nod, and she gestures for you to follow her to a small antechamber adjacent to the chapel. Here, several elderly nuns are seated, their gnarled hands busy with mortar and pestle, grinding dried herbs into fine powder. The air is heavy with the scent of rosemary and something sharper, perhaps sage or wormwood. Sister Hildegard oversees our herbal preparations, Agnes explains, indicating a tall, austere woman whose severe features are softened only by the gentleness in her eyes. She has studied the properties of plants for over 40 years. Sister Hildegard acknowledges your presence with a slight incline of her head, but does not pause in her work. Her fingers move with practiced precision, separating dried leaves from stems, measuring portions with a small brass scale. "Today we prepare the winter remedies," she says without looking up. "The frost will come soon, and the sick do not wait." For fair weather, the chanting in the chapel concludes, and the nuns file out in orderly silence. Some nod to you as they pass, their faces serene in the growing light. Outside, the sky has lightened to a pale grey, and the first birds have begun their morning songs. Sister Agnes leads you to the refectory, a long hall with trestle tables arranged in rows. The meal awaiting the community is spare. Wooden bowls of thin porridge, small cups of watered ale, and dark bread. You take your place at the table designated for visitors and guests, separate from the main community. Our fare is simple, Agnes explains as she places a wooden bowl before you, especially during the fasting seasons. But God provides what we need to sustain our work. The porridge is bland but warming, made from barley and flavored only with a hint of honey. The bread is dense and chewy, requiring effort to consume. You realize that this modest meal is designed to nourish without inducing the sin of gluttony or the distraction of sensory pleasure as you eat. A young nun reads aloud from an elevated pulpit, her clear voice carrying across the refectory. She recites from the works of Saint Benedict, his guidance on the virtues of moderation and the dangers of excess. The community eats in contemplative silence, attending to the words as much as to their meal. When the simple repast concludes, the Abbess Mother Beatrice rises and offers a brief prayer of thanksgiving. The nuns then disperse to their assigned tasks for the day. Sister Agnes introduces you to Sister Constance, the Abbey's herb mistress, who will guide you through the medicinal gardens. Sister Constance came to us from Byzantium many years ago, Agnes explains. She brought knowledge of plants unknown to our lands. Sister Constance is smaller than the other nuns, with olive skin and dark eyes that suggest her Eastern origins. She speaks with a slight accent, her words measured and precise. "The garden awaits," she says, gesturing toward a wooden door. "We have much to accomplish before midday prayers." You follow her through the cloisters and out into the morning air. The abbey gardens spread before you, a meticulously organized paradise of green. Unlike the vegetable gardens that supply the kitchen, the medicinal garden is arranged not in rows but in concentric circles, with paths of crushed limestone radiating from a central well like the spokes of a wheel. This design reflects the order of God's creation, Sister Constance explains, noting your interest in the layout. Each plant has its proper place, just as each soul has its purpose in divine plan. The morning dew still clings to the leaves, transforming ordinary plants into collections of tiny crystal globes that capture the strengthening sunlight. Sister Constance hands you a small woven basket and a knife with a bone handle. "Today we harvest feverfew and chamomile," she says. "The first frost will claim them soon." She demonstrates how to cut the stems without damaging the roots, how to select the plants at the peak of their potency. "Observe the color of the leaves," she instructs, holding a sprig of feverfew to the light. "See this particular shade of green, slightly silvery. This tells you the plant is ready. Too pale, and its virtue is not yet developed. Too dark, and it has begun to fade." You mimic her actions, cutting the stems with care and placing them in your basket. The work is surprisingly peaceful. Birds call to one another from the abbey walls, and bees move methodically from flower to flower in the herb beds. The sun climbs higher, warming your back as you bend to your task. Each plant has its purpose, Sister Constance continues as she works. Just as God created nothing without reason, we grow nothing without use. She points to different sections of the garden: feverfew for headaches and women's ailments, chamomile for sleep and digestion, valerian for those troubled by night terrors, lavender to calm the spirit, rosemary to strengthen memory. As your basket fills with fragrant cuttings, Sister Constance leads you deeper into the garden, to plots where taller plants grow. "These are our most potent remedies," she explains, "and also our most dangerous. We handle them with particular care." She indicates a plant with delicate purple flowers, foxglove. In proper measure, it strengthens the failing heart. In excess, it stops the heart entirely. She moves to a plant with white bell-shaped flowers, lily of the valley. Beautiful to behold, deadly to consume, yet in the smallest quantities it can ease the suffering of dropsy. You notice that these more dangerous plants are separated from the others by low hedges of boxwood. The barriers remind us of boundaries. Sister Constance explains, "In medicine, as in faith, one must know where safety ends and peril begins." The morning passes in this peaceful labor. Your fingers become stained with plant oils, and the scent of herbs clings to your clothing. Sister Constance is a patient teacher, correcting your technique with gentle suggestions rather than criticism. You learn to identify plants by the shape of their leaves, the arrangement of their stems, the subtle variations in their scent. When the bells ring for terce, the mid-morning prayer, you have filled 2 baskets with carefully harvested herbs. Sister Constance leads you to a stone building adjacent to the garden. "Our drying house," she explains, pushing open the heavy wooden door. Inside, the air is warm and intensely fragrant. Bundles of herbs hang from the rafters, drying slowly in the heat from a small brazier. Tables along the walls hold trays of seeds and flower petals spread out to dry. 2 novices work silently, tying new bundles with lengths of twine and hanging them from hooks set into the ceiling beams. "We will prepare your harvest after prayers," Sister Constance says, setting your baskets on a vacant table. Each plant requires different treatment. Some must be dried quickly, others slowly, some in darkness, others in light. You follow her, back through the garden to the chapel. The nuns gather once more for prayer, their voices rising in unified devotion. You observe from the back of the chapel, noticing how the rhythm of their day is marked by these regular pauses for spiritual reflection, work and prayer, action and contemplation, woven together like the threads of a tapestry. After terse, Sister Constance introduces you to Sister Martha, the Abbey's infirmarian. Sister Martha will show you how we prepare our remedies, she explains. I must return to the gardens. Sister Martha is older than Sister Constance, with a round face creased by decades of smiles. Her habit bears stains from her work, the green of plant matter, the brown of earth, the occasional splash of something darker. Come, she says warmly, the still room awaits. The still room occupies the lower floor of a small stone building, near the infirmary. Unlike the bright garden or the airy drying house, this space is dim and windowless, illuminated only by lamps and a small hearth. The air is thick with complex aromas, sweet, bitter, sharp, and earthy scents mingling in an ever-changing symphony. Clay pots of various sizes line the shelves, each carefully labeled in a neat script. Bundles of dried herbs hang from hooks, and glass vessels of different shapes contain liquids of amber, green, and ruby hues. A large wooden table dominates the center of the room, its surface scarred from years of use. Here is where plant becomes medicine, Sister Martha explains, gesturing to the array of implements arranged on the table. God provides the virtues, but we must extract them properly. She shows you a series of leather-bound books resting on a separate table. Our pharmacopoeia, she explains, opening one to reveal pages covered in careful illustrations of plants alongside Latin descriptions of their properties and uses. Knowledge gathered over centuries, some from ancient physicians like Galen and Dioscorides, some from our own observations, passed from one generation of sisters to the next. Sister Martha selects dried plants from the hanging bundles, some from last season's harvest, already properly cured. Today we prepare an electuary for chest ailments, she explains. Winter brings coughs and congestion to many in the village, especially the elderly and the very young. She demonstrates how to grind the herbs horehound, elecampane root, and licorice in a stone mortar. The pestle makes a rhythmic sound against the stone, almost musical in its repetition. Always move in a circle, she instructs, guiding your hand, never back and forth. The circle draws out the virtue, just as the cycles of the seasons draw out the life of plants. To the ground herbs, she adds honey warmed over the hearth fire. Honey preserves the medicine and makes it palatable, she explains, stirring the mixture with a wooden spatula. It also has its own healing properties. The bees are gods, apothecaries. The resulting paste is dark and aromatic, with a complex scent that somehow suggests its effectiveness against winter ailments. Sister Martha carefully transfers it into small clay pots, which she seals with wax and labels with the date and contents. This will last the winter, she says with satisfaction. A spoonful morning and night eases the worst coughs. As the morning progresses into afternoon, Sister Martha shows you other preparations. A tincture of valerian root steeped in spirit of wine for those unable to sleep. An ointment of comfrey for bruises and sprains. A syrup of wild cherry bark for children's coughs. Each remedy requires patience, she explains as you watch her slowly stir a decoction of willow bark, Rushing produces inferior medicine. We work in God's time, not man's haste. You notice that Sister Martha prays quietly before beginning each new preparation. When you ask about this practice, she smiles. The healing comes from God, not from our hands alone. We are merely instruments of His mercy. The prayer reminds us of this truth. The bells ring for sext, midday prayer, and once again the work pauses. After prayers comes the main meal of the day, served in the refectory. Today's fare is slightly more substantial than breakfast, a thick pottage of lentils and root vegetables, more of the dark bread, and small apples from the Abbey orchard. Sister Agnes joins you at the visitors' table. How do you find our ways? She asks, breaking her bread into small pieces. You express your admiration for the Abbey's knowledge of healing plants and the careful methodology behind their preparations. Sister Agnes nods, pleased by your appreciation. Our founder, Mother Sophia, came from Salerno, where she had studied at the famous medical school, she explains. She brought that learning here, but tempered it with our Benedictine devotion to ora et labora, prayer and work. Medicine without prayer is merely technique. Prayer without knowledge is merely superstition. Together, they become true healing. After the meal, Sister Agnes guides you to the infirmary, where you will observe the application of the remedies you have helped to prepare. The infirmary occupies its own building, set slightly apart from the main Abbey complex. Its windows are larger than those in other buildings, allowing more light and air to enter. Inside. The space is divided into two sections, one for the sisters who fall ill, and another for lay people from the surrounding villages who seek the Abbey's medical assistance. Today, the sisters section is empty, a blessing, Sister Agnes notes, but 3 patients occupy the lay people's ward. An elderly man with labored breathing sits propped up on a straw-filled mattress. A young woman, pale and weak, lies on another bed, her arm bandaged. A child of perhaps 7 years dozes fitfully, his small face flushed with fever. Sister Juliana, the assistant infirmarian, moves between the patients with quiet efficiency. She checks the old man's pulse, adjusts the young woman's bandage, and places a cool cloth on the child's forehead. Her movements are gentle but confident, her manner calming. Sister Juliana has a particular gift for diagnosis. Sister Agnes whispers. She can often determine the nature of an illness by observing the patient's complexion, breathing, and the quality of their pulse. You watch as Sister Juliana administers the remedies, a spoonful of the honey-based electuary for the old man, a fresh poultice of comfrey for the young woman's injury, a tisane of feverfew for the feverish child. Each treatment is accompanied by a quiet prayer and a kind word. We treat the body and the spirit together, Sister Agnes explains. Illness affects both, and healing must address both. The afternoon continues with more lessons in the garden. Sister Constance shows you how they propagate plants, dividing roots, collecting and storing seeds, taking cuttings from established specimens. Some plants we have nurtured for generations, she explains, indicating a massive rosemary bush that has grown to the size of a small tree. This was planted by Mother Sophia herself over a century ago. As the light begins to fade from the sky, the bells call the community to vespers. After prayers, there is a light evening meal, more bread, cheese made from the milk of the abbeys, goats, and watered wine. The nuns eat in contemplative silence, their faces showing the gentle fatigue that comes from a day of meaningful work. Following the meal, Sister Agnes invites you to join the community in the chapter house, where the Abbess reads from the Rule of Saint Benedict and offers a brief, spiritual reflection. The nuns sit on simple wooden benches, their hands folded in their laps, attentive to the wisdom being shared. Mother Beatrice speaks of balance between work and prayer, between care for others and care for one's own soul, between knowledge and faith. Our healing arts serve God's children, she says, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the room. But we must first be healed ourselves, daily, by God's grace. After this reading, the community observes the great silence, no speech, until after morning prayers the next day. Sister Agnes leads you back to your guest chamber by lamplight, the abbey corridors hushed and shadowy. Before leaving you for the night, she presses something into your hand, a small clay pot sealed with wax. For peaceful sleep, she whispers, breaking the silence just this once. A gift to remember us by. Alone in your chamber, you open the pot to find a salve, the smells of lavender and chamomile. Following the example you observed in the infirmary, you apply a small amount to your temples and wrists. The scent rises around you like an invisible embrace. Through your narrow window, you can see stars appearing in the darkening sky, the same stars that have watched over this abbey for centuries. The distant sound of nightingales drifts from the woods beyond the walls. Your mind turns over the lessons of the day, the careful harvesting, the patient preparation, the compassionate application of the abbey's remedies. You realize that what makes their healing arts so effective is not just knowledge of plants and their properties, but the context in which that knowledge exists, a life structured by prayer and contemplation, a community dedicated to service, a tradition handed down through generations of women who combined faith with practical wisdom. The silence of the abbey envelops you, broken only by the occasional soft footstep in the corridor or the distant hoot of an owl. The salve begins to work its gentle magic, and your thoughts become slower, dreamier. You understand now why the abbey's remedies are sought by people from miles around. It is not just the effectiveness of the medicines themselves, but the entire approach to healing, holistic, unhurried, attentive to body and spirit alike. As sleep begins to claim you, you wonder about the women who have lived between these walls across the centuries. How many plants have they tenderly cultivated? How many remedies carefully prepared? How many suffering bodies and troubled spirits have found relief through their ministrations? Their lives, like their garden, represent a kind of paradise, not one of idle luxury, but of purpose fulfilled, of potential realized, of service rendered with love and devotion. In a world often harsh and chaotic, they have created this island of order and compassion, where healing flows outward, like ripples from a stone cast into still water. Your last conscious thought before drifting into dreams is that perhaps the most powerful medicine of all is not found in any plant or preparation, but in the way these women live, with intention, with community, with faith in something larger than themselves. The next morning dawns clear and crisp, with the first hint of frost silvering the garden beds. You join the sisters for matins and lauds, then break your fast with the now familiar porridge and bread. Sister Constance invites you to help harvest the last of the calendula flowers before the frost claims them in the garden. The mood is purposeful but peaceful. The nuns work methodically, moving from bed to bed with practiced efficiency. Novices follow behind the more experienced sisters, learning by observation and participation. There is occasional quiet conversation, clarification of instructions, identification of plants, discussions of their uses. But much of the work proceeds in companionable silence. Sister Constance shows you how to gather the bright orange calendula blossoms, cutting them with a small knife and placing them carefully in shallow baskets to prevent bruising. These will become a salve for wounds and skin ailments, she explains. The flowers contain a virtue that fights corruption and promotes clean healing. As you work, you notice an elderly nun sitting on a stone bench at the garden's edge. Unlike the others, she does not participate in the harvest. Instead, she seems to be simply observing, her gnarled hands resting on a walking stick, her face turned toward the morning sun. Sister Matilda, Constance explains, following your gaze. She was our herb mistress for over 50 years. Her hands can no longer do the work, but her eyes still watch over us. When we have questions about unusual cases or rare plants, we seek her wisdom. Later, in the still room, Sister Martha shows you how to infuse the calendula blossoms in olive oil. The oil must be warmed gently, she explains, placing a ceramic vessel at the edge of the hearth. Too hot, and the virtue is destroyed. Too cool, and it will not be extracted. The oil slowly takes on the golden color of the flowers, and their subtle, peppery scent fills the air. This will infuse for 40 days, Sister Martha explains. Then we will strain it and add beeswax to make a salve. You express surprise at the length of time required. Sister Martha smiles. Good medicine, like faith, requires patience. Some remedies take hours to prepare, others weeks or months. Each has its proper time, just as each illness has its course. Throughout the day you continue to assist with various tasks. Grinding dried herbs for winter storage, labeling prepared medicines, even helping Sister Juliana change bandages in the infirmary. Each activity is approached with the same mindful attention, the same integration of practical knowledge and spiritual purpose. At midday, during the main meal, Mother Beatrice approaches your table. Sister Agnes tells me you have been an attentive student, she says. Her voice is warm but dignified, befitting her position as the community's leader. Before you depart tomorrow, I would like to show you something few visitors see. After the meal, the abbess leads you to a small building near the chapter house. Inside is a room lined with shelves holding dozens of bound manuscripts. Our library, she explains, the accumulated knowledge of our community since our founding. She selects a volume bound in faded leather and places it carefully on a reading stand. The pages, you see as she opens it, are made of vellum and covered with precise script and detailed illustrations of plants. The herbarium of Mother Sophia, Mother Beatrice explains, begun when she founded our abbey and expanded by each generation since. The pages contain not only illustrations and descriptions of plants, but detailed accounts of their medicinal uses, methods of preparation, and observations about their effectiveness for various ailments. Some entries include annotations in different handwriting, additions made over the decades as new knowledge was gained. This is our most precious possession after the scriptures themselves, the abbess says, not for its material value, but for the wisdom it contains. Wisdom that has alleviated suffering for countless souls. You spend the afternoon examining this remarkable document, marveling at the detailed observations, the careful record-keeping, the accumulation of practical experience refined over generations. Mother Beatrice explains that each abbess adds to the herbarium during her tenure, ensuring that no useful knowledge is lost when an individual sister passes away. As evening approaches and the light fades, you join the community once more for Vespers and the evening meal. There is a sense of completion to the day, of work well done and purpose fulfilled, in your chamber that night. Preparing for sleep, you reflect on all you have learned during your brief stay at the abbey. The rhythms of the day, governed by the liturgical hours, the careful balance of work and prayer, the integration of faith and practical knowledge, the sense of continuity with the past and responsibility to the future. You understand now that the Abbey's healing tradition is more than a collection of remedies or techniques. It is a whole way of being in the world, attentive, purposeful, reverent toward creation, compassionate toward suffering, the plants in the garden, the preparations in the still room, the treatments in the infirmary, all are expressions of a deeper philosophy, a lived theology of care. As sleep begins to claim you once more, you feel a profound gratitude for the glimpse you have been given into this world, a world where time moves differently, where actions are imbued with meaning, where healing is understood as a sacred trust. The sisters' way of life may seem austere by worldly standards, but it possesses a richness of purpose that many more comfortable existences lack. In the morning, you will return to your ordinary life, carrying with you not only the small pot of salve Sister Agnes gave you, but something more valuable, an appreciation for the quiet wisdom of these women and their centuries-old healing tradition, a tradition that treats body and soul as inseparable aspects of the same divine creation. The night deepens around the abbey, wrapping the ancient stones in darkness. Inside these walls, 24 women sleep the sleep of those who have lived the day well, who have served their purpose with devotion. Tomorrow they will rise before dawn, as they did today, as their predecessors have done for centuries, to begin again the timeless cycle of prayer and work, contemplation and service. And though your paths will soon diverge, for this one night, your sleep is aligned with theirs, deep, peaceful, and watched over by the same stars that have witnessed countless generations of healers tending their gardens between heaven and earth. As dreams of herb, gardens and candlelit chapels begin to drift through your mind, you feel yourself carried on a gentle current toward another time, another place, where ancient wisdom takes a different form but springs from the same deep well of human experience and divine inspiration. The abbey gardens fade, and new visions begin to form in the landscape of your dreaming imagination. Let us now drift like autumn leaves on a gentle breeze, from the quiet sanctuary of the abbey gardens into another realm of ancient wisdom, where mountain mists veil secrets as old as the stones themselves, and healing comes not only from what grows in cultivated beds, but from what the earth offers freely to those who know how to listen. Like gold leaf catching dawn's first light, the sacred art of manuscript illumination awaits your discovery. In the hushed scriptoria of stone abbeys, where time moves to the rhythm of prayers and patience, a world of color and devotion unfolds beneath practiced fingers. Tonight, you will join this silent procession of artistry. You awaken to the gentle chime of bells, their bronze voices softly echoing through the stone corridors of the abbey. The pre-dawn darkness still envelops the world outside, but it is time to rise. Your small cell is sparsely furnished, a narrow wooden bed with a straw mattress, a simple wooden chest for your few belongings, and a small table upon which rests your prayer book. The stone floor is cold beneath your bare feet as you slip them into worn leather sandals. The woolen habit you don is rough against your skin, a constant reminder of your vows of simplicity. The weight of the fabric is familiar and grounding. You fasten it with practiced movements, then cover your head with a simple white veil, tucking away your shorn hair, a sacrifice made long ago when you entered this sacred community of sisters. dedicated to God and the preservation of knowledge. You join the silent procession of sisters moving through the dim corridor, each carrying a small tallow candle that casts dancing shadows on the ancient stone walls. The scent of beeswax mingles with the cool morning air. No one speaks. The great silence that begins after Compline, the night before, will only be broken after the morning office of Prime. Your footsteps, along with those of your sisters, create a gentle rhythm on the stone floor. Like a distant, soothing heartbeat, the chapel awaits, its space illuminated by dozens of candles that make the gold accents on the altar shimmer like stars. You take your place in the wooden choir stall that has borne the weight of countless sisters before you. The smooth wood, polished by years of use, feels cool beneath your hands. As the abbess enters, you rise with the others, and the first notes of Gregorian chant rise toward the vaulted ceiling. Your voice joins with those of your sisters, the Latin phrases flowing from memory, words that have shaped your days for years. After Mass and a simple breakfast of brown bread and herbal tea in the refectory, taken in silence as Sister Agnes reads aloud from the writings of Saint Benedict, you make your way to the scriptorium. This large chamber, with its high windows positioned to catch the northern light, is where you spend most of your waking hours. It is here that your hands participate in the sacred work of preserving and creating texts that will outlive everyone present. The scriptorium is already warming as you enter, the fire having been tended since before dawn by Sister Martha. Several of your sisters are already settling at their desks, large oak tables angled to catch the best light. Each desk holds the tools of your calling: quills, parchment, pounce for preparing the surface, and small pots of precious pigments that have been carefully ground and mixed with egg white to create the vibrant paints used in illumination. You take your place at your desk by the window. The chair, hard and backless, ensures you maintain the proper posture for the detailed work ahead. Before you lies the project that has occupied your hands and heart for the past 3 months, a book of hours commissioned by a wealthy merchant for his daughter's wedding gift. The pages of carefully prepared calfskin parchment feel supple beneath your fingers as you arrange them on your desk. The morning light filters through the high windows, casting a gentle glow on your workspace. You begin your work by whispering a prayer asking for steady hands and clear vision. Then, with practiced movements, you prepare your tools, checking the sharpness of your quills, ensuring the small pots of pigment are properly mixed, and laying out the precious gold leaf that will illuminate your work with divine light. The scriptorium gradually fills with the soft sounds of creation, the gentle scratch of quill on parchment, the occasional quiet cough or shuffle of robes, and sometimes the soft voice of the novice mistress providing instruction to the younger sisters who are still learning this sacred craft. There is a rhythm to the day here, a peaceful cadence that allows your mind to focus entirely on the detailed work before you. Today, you are working on an illuminated initial, the letter D that begins the psalm. Dominus illuminatio me. The Lord is my light. The design you've sketched shows the letter inhabited by King David playing his harp, surrounded by intricate vinework that will eventually be embellished with gold leaf. Before applying any color, you carefully trace your design onto the parchment with a fine stylus, making indentations that will guide your brush. The work requires absolute concentration. You dip your fine-tipped brush into a small pot of vermilion, a vibrant red pigment made from ground cinnabar that was brought by merchants from distant lands. The color is precious, expensive, and beautiful. You apply it with precise strokes to form the body of the letter. The paint is thick and glossy, catching the light as it dries. As the morning progresses, the scriptorium warms with the bodies of the sisters at work. The quiet concentration is a form of prayer itself. Each careful stroke a meditation, each completed page an offering. Outside, you catch glimpses of the abbey gardens coming to life as the morning progresses. Birds flit between the fruit trees, their songs occasionally drifting through the windows. Midway through the morning, your back begins to ache from the careful posture required for such detailed work. You straighten slowly, rolling your shoulders to ease the tension. Sister Catherine, who works at the desk beside yours, catches your eye and smiles gently in understanding. She has been at this work for over 40 years, her fingers now gnarled with age, but still remarkably steady when holding a brush. You return to your work, now mixing a deep azure blue from crushed lapis lazuli, the most precious of all pigments, reserved only for the most important manuscripts or the robes of the Virgin Mary in sacred scenes. The stone was brought all the way from Afghanistan by traders, traveling for months along dangerous routes. You add a drop of egg white to bind the pigment, stirring it carefully with a small wooden stick until it reaches the perfect consistency. Each color has its own character, its own challenges. The blue requires multiple thin layers to achieve its luminous depth. You work patiently, allowing each layer to dry before applying the next. The gold leaf will come last, adhered with a special mixture of gum and applied with a soft brush made from squirrel hair. The gold catches even the dimmest light, symbolizing divine illumination on the page. The bell rings for the office of terse, calling the community to prayer once again. You carefully clean your brushes, covering your pigments to keep them moist, and join your sisters in the procession back to the chapel. These interruptions of prayer throughout the day are not disruptions, but the very purpose of your existence. The work of your hands merely an extension of your prayers. After terse comes more work in the scriptorium until the midday meal. The hours pass in a gentle rhythm of focused attention. Your fingers grow stained with pigment despite your care, the blues and reds embedding themselves in the whorls of your fingertips like tiny maps of your devotion. At midday, you join your sisters again in the refectory. The rule of silence has been lifted for this meal, and gentle conversation flows around you as you eat a simple meal of vegetable pottage and more brown bread. Sister Agnes reads from the life of St. Catherine of Alexandria, her steady voice a backdrop to the subtle sounds of wooden spoons against wooden bowls. After the meal, there is a brief time for rest. Some sisters retire to their cells. Others walk softly in the cloisters, enjoying the fresh air and the sight of the medicinal herbs and flowers growing in the central garden. You choose to sit on a stone bench in the cloister walkway, letting the spring sunshine warm your face. The stone columns cast rhythmic shadows across the walkway, creating a pattern not unlike the geometric borders. You've been painting in your manuscript. Your thoughts drift to the manuscript waiting for you. In the scriptorium, to the careful application of gold leaf that will occupy your afternoon. Working with gold is perhaps the most challenging aspect of illumination. The thin sheets, beaten until they are almost transparent, will adhere to anything, a stray breath, a fingerprint. The natural oils of your skin. You have learned to hold your breath when applying it, to work with absolute stillness. When the bell calls you back to work, you return to the scriptorium with renewed focus. The afternoon light has shifted, casting longer shadows across the room. You adjust your desk slightly to maintain the ideal angle for your work. The scriptorium is quieter now. Sister Beatrice has taken the novices to practice their lettering forms in another room, reducing the number of bodies and thus the heat and distractions. Before working with the gold, you prepare the surface with a special mixture of gesso, a combination of plaster, glue, and clay that will give the gold its characteristic raised appearance. You apply this carefully to the areas marked in your design, using a quill with a blunted nib. The gesso must be perfectly smooth but raised enough to create the desired effect once the gold is applied. While waiting for the gesso to dry to the perfect tackiness, you prepare your tools for gilding. From a small box lined with parchment, you remove a booklet of gold leaf, each page separating the impossibly thin sheets of metal. You take out your gilding knife, its wide, flat blade designed specifically for handling the delicate material, and the soft brush made from squirrel hair that you will use to press the gold onto the gesso. Working with gold requires absolute concentration and perfect conditions. You check that no drafts are coming through the windows, that your hands are clean and dry. Then, with a careful movement, you lift a sheet of gold with your knife, your breath held steady. The gold quivers on your knife blade, catching the light, and seeming almost liquid in its delicacy. You lower the gold over the prepared area, letting it settle gently onto the tacky gel. With your softest brush, you press it down with gentle taps, securing it to the surface. Excess gold flakes away, which you carefully collect in a small container. Nothing so precious can be wasted. Even these tiny flakes will be mixed with gum arabic to create shell gold for smaller details. As the afternoon progresses, you continue applying gold to your design. When finished, you burnish it with a smooth agate stone, polishing the surface until it gleams like a mirror. The effect is transformative. What was once simply a drawing on parchment now seems to capture light itself, to hold it on the page as a physical manifestation of divine presence. With the gilding complete, you return to your pigments, adding the final details to your illumination. Fine white highlights bring dimension to the vine work. Tiny dots of pure color create texture and depth. You lose yourself in the minutiae of the work, each leaf, each twisted vine, each fold in King David's robe receiving your complete attention. When the bell rings for Vespers, you are surprised at how quickly the afternoon has passed. You clean your tools, meticulously washing brushes in clean water, covering pigments, storing the precious gold leaf in its protective parchment book. Your completed page is carefully covered with a clean cloth to protect it as the paints continue to dry overnight. As you leave the scriptorium, Sister Catherine compliments your work on the illuminated initial. The gold catches the light beautifully, she says softly. God's hand guides yours. You accept the praise with humility, knowing that any beauty achieved is not yours, but a reflection of something greater. The evening prayer of Vespers fills the chapel with gentle harmonies as daylight begins to fade. The stained glass windows, which during the day fill the space with colored light, now appear dark against the candlelit interior. Your voice joins with those of your sisters, the familiar Latin phrases rising and falling in ancient patterns. After Vespers comes the evening meal in the refectory, a simple supper of fish, bread, and fresh greens from the garden. Tonight, the abbess has permitted talk during the meal, and quiet conversations bloom around the long wooden tables. Sister Edith speaks of a rare plant that has finally bloomed in the herb garden, while across the table, Sisters Margaret and Joan discuss the binding of a recently completed psalter. You listen more than you speak, your mind still partially occupied with the illumination you will continue tomorrow. There is a section of intricate borderwork still to complete, and you mentally review the design as you eat your meal. The fish is fresh from the abbey's fish ponds, simply prepared with herbs. You savor each bite, mindful that this abundance is not guaranteed in the world beyond the abbey walls. After the meal, there is a brief period of recreational time before Compline, the final office of the day. Some sisters gather in the chapter house to work on embroidery or mending by candlelight. Others take slow walks in the cloister garden, enjoying the evening air and the scent of night-blooming flowers. You choose to visit the abbey library, a treasure house of knowledge that few in the outside world will ever see. The room smells of parchment, leather, and the beeswax candles that provide the only safe illumination among such flammable materials. The library sister, who keeps watch over these precious volumes, nods as you enter. You move along the shelves until you find what you're looking for, a beautifully illuminated bestiary created by sisters in this very abbey a generation before. You carefully take it to the reading desk, opening it with reverent hands. You've come seeking inspiration for the marginal illustrations you'll begin tomorrow. The small animals and fantastical creatures that will inhabit the borders of your pages. The bestiary shows creatures both real and imagined, from lions and eagles to unicorns and basilisks. Each is rendered with careful attention to detail, accompanied by text explaining its nature and spiritual significance. You study the delicate brushwork, the layering of colors, the composition of each illustration. Though you've seen this manuscript many times before, you always discover something new, a clever detail, a particularly beautiful combination of colors. As you turn the pages, you reflect on how these illuminated manuscripts connect you to the sisters who came before, women whose names may be forgotten but whose work endures. Your own contribution is but a small thread in this tapestry of creation that spans centuries. There is comfort in this continuity, this shared purpose, that transcends individual lives. The bell calls you to Compline, the final prayers of the day. You carefully close the bestiary, returning it to its place on the shelf with a silent word of thanks to the unknown sisters whose work has inspired your own. Then you join the procession, moving through the darkening corridors toward the chapel. One final time today, Compline has a special quality, a gentle winding down, a preparation for the night's rest. The chants are slower, more contemplative. Candles cast long shadows across the chapel floor. At the conclusion of the office, the abbess sprinkles each sister with holy water as you file out in silence. The great silence has begun again, to last until after prime tomorrow morning. You walk back to your cell in this sacred silence, carrying only a small candle to light your way. The stone corridors feel different at night, more ancient, more mysterious. Moonlight streams through occasional windows, creating pools of silver on the floor. The abbey seems to hold its breath, as if the very stones are settling into prayer. Your cell welcomes you with its familiar simplicity. You place your candle in its holder and prepare for sleep, washing your hands and face in the basin of cool water. As you remove your veil and outer habit, you notice again the stains on your fingers, the blues, reds, and golds that mark you as an illuminator. These colors have become part of you, embedded in your skin, just as the prayers and rhythms of monastic life have become embedded in your being. You kneel beside your narrow bed for your personal prayers, giving thanks for the day's work, for the gift of creating beauty in God's name. You pray for steady hands tomorrow, for clear vision, for the patience to continue this meticulous work. You pray also for those who will eventually use the book of hours you are creating, that they might find in its pages the same peace and connection to the divine that you feel when creating it. As you slip beneath the woolen blanket on your bed, you close your eyes and see again the illuminated initial you worked on today, the deep blues, the vibrant reds, the shimmering gold. In your mind, you continue to paint, adding details, refining edges. Even in sleep, your fingers will remember the movements of your craft, and your dreams will often be filled with colors and patterns. The stone walls of your cell hold the day's warmth, creating a cocoon of quiet comfort around you. Outside your small window, stars wheel slowly across the night sky, the same stars that have watched over this abbey for centuries. The same stars that will continue their silent journey long after both you and your work have returned to dust. But the manuscripts, those might endure. The thought brings you peace as you drift toward sleep. Tomorrow will bring more hours in the scriptorium, more careful application of pigment to parchment, more transformation of raw materials into vessels of beauty and meaning. It is work that requires your whole self, body, mind, and spirit, aligned in service to something greater. In the scriptorium, time moves differently. Hours can pass in what seems like moments when you are deeply engaged in your work. The outside world, with its politics and conflicts, seems very far away. Here, within these walls, there is order and purpose. Each day follows the one before it in predictable rhythm, yet each day also brings new challenges and discoveries in your craft. You think of the manuscripts you have worked on over the years, Gospels, Psalters, books of hours. Each one required different skills, different approaches. You remember your first assigned task as a novice, grinding pigments for the older sisters, learning to recognize the subtle differences in texture and consistency that make for perfect paint. You remember your first complete illuminated letter, a simple eye at the beginning of a psalm, decorated with modest vine work. How proud you had been of that small accomplishment, and how much you have learned since then. Sleep begins to cloud, your thoughts softening the edges of consciousness. Your breathing deepens, matching the quiet rhythm of the abbey itself. Tomorrow will come with its bells and prayers and hours in the scriptorium. The manuscript will progress page by page, each one a small universe of color and form. Your hands will continue their patient work, adding your contribution to the great river of knowledge and beauty that flows through time. As you drift into dreams, you carry with you the images of what you have created and what you will create. Tomorrow, the blue of the Virgin's robe, the red of martyr's blood, the gold of divine light, these colors follow you into sleep, transforming into landscapes and figures that move through your dreaming mind. Even in rest, the work continues in some deep part of you, preparing your hands and eyes for tomorrow's illuminations. You dream of mixing colors that have never existed before, of illuminations so perfect they seem to breathe on the page. Dream of the finished book of hours being opened for the first time by the merchant's daughter, her eyes widening at the beauty contained within its covers. You dream of future generations finding this book carefully preserved, and standing in wonder at the craftsmanship of anonymous hands from centuries past. This is the gift and burden of the illuminator, to work in meticulous detail on something that may outlast not just your own life, but the lives of entire generations to come. It requires both humility and ambition. Humility to devote yourself to such slow, painstaking work. Ambition to create something worthy of that devotion. In the deep quiet of the night, The abbey settles around you. Other sisters sleep in identical cells along the corridor, each with her own dreams, her own prayers, her own role in this community. Together, you form something greater than any individual, a living tradition, a continuation of practices that stretch back through centuries. The next morning arrives as it always does, with the gentle sound of bells calling you to prayer before dawn has touched the sky. You rise from your narrow bed, your body remembering the movements even before your mind is fully awake. The cool stone floor beneath your feet grounds you in the physical world as your spirit prepares for the day's first prayers. As you don your habit and veil once more, you feel a sense of anticipation for the day's work ahead in the scriptorium. Yesterday's illumination waits for your return, the gold catching the first light that will soon stream through the high windows. Your hands, though sometimes aching from the detailed work, are eager to hold brush and quill again. You join the line of sisters moving through the corridor toward the chapel, each carrying a small candle that pushes back the darkness. In this moment, as in every moment in the rhythm of monastic life, you are connected to all those who have walked this path before you and all those who will follow. The work of illumination is much the same, a continuous thread of beauty, woven through time, connecting past to future through the patient work of present hands. The chapel receives you in pre-dawn darkness, the candles on the altar creating islands of warm light in the shadowed space. As you take your place in the choir, and the first notes of chant rise toward heaven, you feel a profound sense of belonging to this place, to this tradition, to this sacred work that occupies your days. After the morning office, you will return to the scriptorium. You will mix your pigments, sharpen your quills, and continue the careful work of creating beauty one brushstroke at a time. The manuscript will grow page by page, a physical manifestation of devotion and skill, and when it is complete, it will leave these walls to begin its own journey through time, carrying within its pages not just words and images, but something of the spirit of this place and the hands that created it. This is the way of the illuminator, to work in silence and patience, to transform simple materials into vessels of light and meaning, to leave behind something that speaks when your own voice has long been silenced by time. It is a calling that demands everything and promises nothing in return except the quiet satisfaction of work well done. As you sit in the wooden choir stall, your voice joining with those of your sisters in ancient chant, you feel a deep gratitude for this life you have been called to, for the community that supports you, for the skills you have been given, for the opportunity to create beauty that might endure. The day stretches before you with its familiar rhythm of prayer and work, each hour a gift to be filled with purpose. The chant continues, rising and falling like gentle waves against a shore. Outside, the first hint of dawn touches the eastern sky. Soon, you will break your fast with simple food. Then make your way to the scriptorium where parchment, pigment, and gold await your return. There, in the quiet company of your sisters, you will continue the patient work of illumination, adding your small contribution to the great treasury of beauty and knowledge that spans the centuries, in this moment, as in every moment within these abbey walls. You are exactly where you are meant to be, a keeper of tradition, a creator of beauty, a link in the unbroken chain of those who preserve knowledge through the work of their hands. The manuscript awaits, its pages ready to receive the colors that will transform them from mere parchment into windows opening onto divine light. As the quill is set down and the gold leaf settles into its final resting place, we leave behind the quiet scriptorium. Let your mind now drift to another chamber of medieval wisdom, where stone and shadow tell their own ancient story. In the hallowed darkness, where time slows to the rhythm of breathing, voices rise like mist from stone. The sisters' chants weave a tapestry of devotion that has endured for centuries, each note a golden thread connecting heaven and earth. Tonight, you shall wander through their melodic garden, where prayers bloom into song. The pre-dawn darkness is absolute in the stone corridors of the abbey. You stir from your simple straw pallet as the distant sound of a wooden clapper echoes through the dormitory. Around you, dark shapes begin to move, the rustle of woolen habits, whispering against the floor as your sisters rise from their beds. This is the hour of matins, the first office of the day, when the Benedictine rhythm begins while the world outside still sleeps. The chill of the stone floor meets your bare feet as you slip them into simple leather sandals, your body remembering the motions even as your mind lingers at the edge of dreams. No one speaks. Words are not needed in this sacred darkness. The rule of silence prevails from Compline until after prime. But even if speaking were permitted, what would there be to say? The pattern of days has remained unchanged for generations, a living connection to those who walked these same paths centuries before. You take your heavy woolen cloak from its peg, wrapping it around your shoulders against the chill that seeps through the thick walls, even in summer. The abbey has stood for nearly 100 years now, built of local stone that seems to exhale cold air regardless of the season. Moving through the cloister walkway, your eyes adjust to find the faint outlines of your sisters' 50 women of varying ages, though most came to the abbey as children, given by their families to serve God. The shadows move with practiced silence, a choreography performed thousands of times, through the covered walkway, past the central garden where herbs are cultivated for medicine and cooking, toward the perpetual glow that emanates from the church, where candles are never allowed to extinguish completely. The heavy wooden door to the church opens with a whisper, maintained meticulously to ensure silence. Within, the candles have been refreshed by the sacristan who rose before the others. Small flames dance and cast elongated shadows up the stone columns that support the roof. The church smells of beeswax, incense, and ancient stone, a perfume that has permeated your clothing, your skin, your very being during your years of devotion. You file into your assigned place in the choir stalls, the wooden seat polished by generations of women who sat here before you. The abbess takes her place, and with a subtle gesture, the office begins. No introduction is needed. Every woman knows exactly what prayers and psalms will be chanted for this day, at this hour. The liturgical calendar is inscribed in your mind, as surely as if it were tattooed upon your heart. A single voice rises in the darkness, the cantrix beginning the invitatory psalm. Domine, lavia mea, appears. Lord, open my lips. The words are familiar as your own breath, Latin phrases that have shaped your understanding of the world. Etos meum, annuntiabet laudum tuum, and my mouth shall proclaim your praise. The response comes from 50 throats at once, a wave of sound that seems to make the very stones of the church vibrate in sympathy. The acoustic properties of the space were designed for this very purpose, to amplify and beautify the human voice raised in praise. You breathe deeply, centering yourself for what is to come. The rhythm of the chant is as natural to you as your heartbeat, having been taught these melodies since childhood. The notation system created by Guido of Arezzo has made it possible to preserve these sacred melodies with precision, passed from one generation to the next. Your education began with learning to read the neumes, those curious symbols that ride above the text, indicating the rise and fall of the melody like birds in flight. Years of practice have made this language of music as legible to you as any written word. The Psalter rests on the lectern before you, its pages illuminated by a single candle. Though you scarcely need to reference it, having memorized most of the daily offices, your eyes follow along out of habit. The verses of the psalm alternate between the two sides of the choir, a practice dating back to the desert fathers who established the first monastic communities. This antiphonal arrangement creates a conversation in song, a sacred dialogue that fills the vaulted space. Your voice joins with the others, neither too loud nor too soft, blending into the communal sound. Individual ego has no place here. The goal is unity, harmony, a single voice composed of many. The chant moves in what musicians call the 8 church modes, ancient scales that predate the modern major and minor. Tonight you sing in the solemn gravity of Mode 1, the Dorian, its melody carrying a dignified weight appropriate for the pre-dawn darkness. As you chant, your body settles into the familiar rhythm of slight swaying, almost imperceptible but necessary to maintain the flow of breath. The Latin words form in your mouth with practiced ease, consonants crisp, vowels elongated and pure. Veneta, exultimus, domino. Come, let us sing to the Lord. The invitation extends not just to those present, but seems to reach beyond the walls, calling to all creation to join in this cosmic hymn of praise. Through the high windows of the church, the faintest suggestion of approaching dawn begins to lighten the eastern sky. The timing is deliberate. Matins is positioned to greet the day before it arrives, a spiritual vigilance that mirrors the gospel instruction to keep watch, for you do not know the day nor the hour. Your stomach tightens slightly with hunger. Yesterday's fast continues until after the morning mass, but the sensation is familiar, even welcome, a physical reminder of your spiritual purpose. The rhythm of the psalms continues, each one followed by an antiphon chosen specifically for the day. Between psalms, there is a pause, a moment of silence that feels as substantive as the sound that preceded it. These silences are not empty but pregnant with meaning, spaces in which the divine presence can be felt most acutely. In the Eastern Church, they speak of hesychia, the profound stillness that allows for communion with God. Here in your Benedictine Abbey, that principle is honored even if called by a different name. The office of Matins proceeds through its familiar structure. Psalms, readings from Scripture, responses, and the great canticle of praise, the Te Deum. By the time it concludes, the sky visible through the windows has lightened perceptibly. Without pause, the community transitions into the office of Lauds, the praise of daybreak. The character of the chant shifts subtly, the melodies becoming more buoyant as they greet the light that symbolizes Christ's resurrection. Throughout Lauds, you are aware of the gradually increasing illumination within the church. Candles that seemed bright in total darkness now appear faint as natural light begins to filter through the windows. The stained glass, which appeared black against the night, now reveals hints of its jewel-like colors, sapphire blues, ruby reds, and emerald greens depicting scenes from Scripture and the lives of saints. As the final Amen of Lauds resonates through the church, the community observes another moment of profound silence. Then, without verbal instruction, everyone rises, It is time for the chapter meeting, where the abbess will read from the rule of Saint Benedict and assign the day's tasks. You follow your sisters into the chapter house, a smaller room adjacent to the church where community business is conducted. The abbess reads from chapter 38 of the rule. Reading will always accompany the meals of the brothers. She explains that Sister Magdalene will be the reader for the coming week, responsible for reading aloud during meals while the community eats. In silence, the responsibility rotates among those with clear voices and good diction. You've served in this role many times, having been praised for your clear pronunciation of Latin and French texts. After the chapter meeting concludes, the community processes to the church once more for prime, the first hour of the daytime offices. By now, the sun has fully risen, illuminating the church through its eastern windows. The chant for prime has a brisk, purposeful quality, befitting the beginning of the working day. Jam Lucy's auto sedere. Now that the star of light has risen, the hymn celebrates the dawn, both literal and metaphorical. With the conclusion of prime, the great silence of the night officially ends. Sisters may now speak when necessary, though idle conversation remains discouraged. The community moves toward the refectory for a simple breakfast. A piece of bread, with perhaps a small cup of watered wine or ale, depending on the season and the particular observances of your house. Today being Wednesday, a partial fast day, the portion is smaller than usual. After breaking your fast, you proceed to your assigned task for the morning. As one of the more educated sisters, you often work in the scriptorium, copying manuscripts or noting musical compositions. Today, however, you have been assigned to assist the cantrix in preparing for the upcoming feast day, which will require special musical settings. This is work you particularly enjoy. Having a natural affinity for music since childhood, the cantrix Sister Agnes greets you with a nod as you enter her small workspace off the cloister. Before her lies an antiphonary, a large book containing the musical notation for the divine office. The pages are made of vellum, prepared from calfskin through a laborious process of cleaning, stretching, and smoothing. The resulting material is durable enough to last centuries if properly cared for. We must review the proper chants for the feast of Saint Bernard. Sister Agnes explains, her voice kept low even though speaking is now permitted. The abbess wishes to incorporate some of the melodies composed at Cluny in his honor. She points to a page where neumes dance above the Latin text, indicating the rise and fall of the melodic line. You sit beside her on the wooden bench, studying the notation. The system of lines and spaces developed by Guido has made it possible to indicate precise pitch relationships, a vast improvement over the earlier methods that relied more heavily on oral tradition and memory. Still, there are subtleties of rhythm and expression that cannot be fully captured on parchment, which is why working directly with the cantrix is essential. Sister Agnes begins to sing softly, her finger tracing the neumes as she demonstrates. The melody, her voice is clear and true. Despite her advancing years, she has been cantrix for over 2 decades, and her knowledge of the repertoire is unmatched in the community. You listen carefully, absorbing not just the notes, but the manner of expression, the slight lengthening of certain syllables, the gentle pulse that underlies the seemingly free-flowing rhythm. When she finishes the antiphon, you repeat it back to her, matching her interpretation as closely as possible. She nods in approval, but corrects your pronunciation of keratitis. The middle syllable should be slightly more emphasized. You try again, and this time she smiles. Good. Now let us work on the responsory. This one is more complex. The The morning passes in this manner, singing and refining, occasionally making notations with a sharpened quill in the margins of a working copy. The act of singing these ancient melodies produces a curious effect, though you are fully focused on the technical aspects of the music. There is also a meditative quality to the practice. The melodies themselves, many composed centuries ago by unknown monks and nuns, seem to bypass the thinking mind and speak directly to the soul. At mid-morning, the bell rings for terce, the third hour. You and Sister Agnes set aside your work and return to the church to join the community. The office is brief, allowing for a quick return to work before sext at midday. The rhythm of the day is measured not by hours, but by these sacred appointments, moments when all work ceases and the community reunites in prayer after terce. You return to the cantrix's room to continue your work on the feast day preparations. Sister Agnes hands you several sheets of parchment containing newly composed pieces that need to be integrated into the existing service. These were sent from the abbey at Fontevraud. She explains, the abbess thinks they will add suitable solemnity to our celebration. You examine the notation, noticing differences in the scribal hand from your own community's style. The neumes are slightly more angular, the clef signs positioned differently on the staff. Despite these cosmetic variations, the musical language is the same. The universal language of Gregorian chant that unites religious communities across Christendom. Sister Agnes begins to sing one of the new pieces, an elaborate Alleluia with an extended melisma, a passage where a single syllable is stretched across many notes, like a thread of gold being drawn into a fine wire. The melody seems to hover and circle, creating a sense of timelessness appropriate for contemplating eternity. You join her on the repeat, your voices twining together in the small room. The bell sounds for sext. The midday office, followed by the main meal of the day. In the refectory, you take your assigned place at the long wooden table. The abbess says the blessing, and then Sister Magdalene begins to read from the life of Saint Benedict as you eat in silence. Today's meal consists of a vegetable, pottage, turnips, onions, and dried peas, cooked to a thick consistency, served with a piece of dark bread. On non-fast days, there might be fish or eggs, but today the fare is simpler. You eat mindfully, aware of each spoonful, each subtle flavor. The rule prescribes moderation in all things, including food, teaching that the body should be neither pampered nor punished excessively. The vegetables from the abbey garden taste fresh and wholesome, and the bread, baked yesterday in the abbey ovens, has a satisfying density. You drink sparingly from a cup of small beer, lightly fermented and safer than water, yet not strong enough to cloud the mind. After the meal comes a period for rest or light reading. Some sisters retire to the dormitory for a brief sleep, while others walk silently in the cloister garden or sit in the chapter house with devotional texts. You choose to remain in the refectory with a copy of Gregory the Great's commentaries, which the librarian has permitted you to study in preparation for the feast day. The afternoon bell calls you to none, after which you return to work with Sister Agnes. The remainder of the day will be devoted to teaching the special chants to the novices who must learn their parts for the upcoming celebration. The novices arrive in the cantrix's room looking both eager and nervous. Many come from noble families and have received some musical training before entering the abbey. But the precision and spiritual depth required for liturgical chant is a different matter entirely. You help Sister Agnes demonstrate the proper techniques, how to support the breath from deep within the body. how to shape vowels so they resonate in the church acoustic, how to maintain pitch through long phrases without wavering. The young women watch and listen attentively, imitating each demonstration with varying degrees of success. One novice, Sister Cecilia, shows particular aptitude. Her voice has a pure, bell-like quality that will serve the community well in years to come. You take special care with her, recognizing a potential future tricks. Listen to how the melody reflects the meaning of the text. You explain to her quietly while the others practice a repeated section with Sister Agnes. When the words speak of ascending to heaven, the notes rise accordingly. When we sing of humility, the melody descends. As the afternoon progresses, the sound of the group improves. What began as uncertain individual voices gradually blends into a cohesive whole. Sister Agnes nods with satisfaction. Remember, she tells the novices, Saint Augustine said that he who sings prays twice. Your voices are instruments of devotion. Technical perfection matters less than the sincerity of your hearts. The bell sounds for Vespers, the evening office. The entire community gathers once more in the church as the light begins to fade. The chant for Vespers has a reflective quality, giving thanks for the day that is passing and preparing the soul for the approach of night. The psalms appointed for this hour speak of God's mercy and protection, reassuring themes as darkness falls. After Vespers comes the evening meal, lighter than the midday repast. Perhaps some bread with cheese or fruit, depending on the season. Sister Magdalene reads again from the life of Saint Benedict, her voice providing the only sound other than the minimal noises of eating. You notice how the readers themselves seldom look at their food while performing this service, focused entirely on pronouncing the text clearly for the benefit of their sisters. Following the evening meal, there is a brief period of communal gathering in the cloister or, in colder weather, in the warming room, the one chamber besides the kitchen where a fire is permitted during winter. This is a time for necessary conversation about community matters, for sharing information relevant to the abbey's functioning. The abbess discusses preparations for visiting dignitaries expected for the feast day, assigning special duties to various sisters. As twilight deepens into true darkness, the bell calls you to Compline, the final office of the day. The church is now illuminated only by a few candles, creating pools of warm light amid growing shadows. The chanting takes on a hushed, intimate quality appropriate to the end of day. The hymn Te Lucis ante terminum, before the ending of the light, asks for God's protection through the vulnerable hours of darkness. Compline concludes with the Salve Regina, a beautiful antiphon to the Virgin Mary that serves as the community's collective goodnight prayer. The melody is among the most beloved in the repertoire, its gently arching phrases conveying both supplication and trust. Ad te suspiramus, gementis, it flentis, in hac lacrimarum valle, to thee do we sigh, mourning and weeping in this valley of tears. The ancient words acknowledge the difficulties of earthly existence while placing hope in divine compassion as the final notes fade into silence. The abbess sprinkles each sister with holy water, a blessing before sleep. The great silence begins once more, to continue until after prime tomorrow. You process with your sisters back to the dormitory, a large open room where all sleep in simple beds arranged in rows. Privacy is minimal, just enough space between beds to kneel for prayers, and perhaps a small chest for personal items like an extra habit, a prayer book, or letters from family. You prepare for sleep by washing your face and hands in a basin of cold water, then changing into a night shift while modestly remaining covered by your outer garment until the last moment. Around you, your sisters perform the same ritual. A choreography of modest efficiency. Some of the older nuns move more slowly, their joints stiffened by years of kneeling on cold stone floors. But they accept these physical challenges as part of their vocation. Before lying down, you kneel beside your bed for private prayers. Though the rule prescribes the communal offices, this personal devotion has become part of your nightly routine, a chance to reflect on the day's events and examine your conscience before surrendering to sleep. You thank God for the gift of music, for the way the sacred melodies carry your spirit upward even when your body is weary. As you settle onto your straw mattress, pulling the woolen blanket up against the perpetual chill, you find yourself mentally reviewing the new chants learned. Today, the melodies continue to play in your mind as consciousness begins to fade. This too is a form of prayer. The music that has filled your day now accompanies you into dreams, a continuous thread of devotion, unbroken even by sleep. In the darkness, someone coughs. Another sister turns in her bed, the straw rustling softly. These small sounds are comforting, reminders that you are part of a living community united in purpose. Through the high windows of the dormitory, you can see stars, the same stars that have looked down on countless generations of women who chose this life of prayer and song. Morning will come quickly, with its bells and chants and duties. But, for now, there is the blessed quiet of night, the gentle rhythm of breathing all around you, and the melodies that continue to echo in your heart. Sicitarat in principio, iti nunc, iti semper, iti in saecula, securum. Amen. As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. The ancient words are your lullaby, carrying you into sleep. In the deepest part of night, the church is not entirely empty. Two sisters keep vigil, maintaining the perpetual prayer that is one of your abbey's special charisms. They chant quietly in the choir, their voices barely audible beyond the sacred space. This continuous prayer, like the ever-burning lamp before the altar, symbolizes the community's constant vigilance, watching and waiting. As the wise virgins in the parable kept their lamps trimmed for the bridegroom's arrival, these night offices are rotated among the sisters, each taking her turn to sacrifice sleep for prayer. When it is your turn, you find a peculiar clarity in those midnight hours, a stillness in which the veil between heaven and earth seems particularly thin. The chants, sung in darkness, have a different quality than those offered in daylight. More ethereal, more intimate, as though sung directly into the ear of God, before dawn arrives again, bringing with it another cycle of prayer and work. You drift through layers of sleep where the boundaries between conscious thought and dreams grow indistinct. The melodies learned today intertwine with fragments of scripture and memories of childhood. In this half-waking state, you sometimes experience what the mystical writers describe as a foretaste of heaven, moments when the beauty of the chant seems to lift your soul beyond the confines of time and place. Sister Agnes once told you that the true purpose of sacred music is not performance, but transformation, that through the disciplined practice of chant, the singer gradually becomes the song. We do not merely sing the office, she said, we become the office. Our very lives become a continuous canticle of praise. In the liminal space between wakefulness and dreaming, you begin to understand what she meant. The night passes, measured by the changing position of stars visible through the dormitory windows. In a few hours, the wooden clapper will sound once more, calling you from sleep to join your voice with your sisters in greeting another day. The cycle continues, unchanging yet ever new, a rhythm of devotion that has sustained generations of women seeking to attune their lives to the music of eternity. And so, as one day flows seamlessly into the next, the great chant continues, a river of sound that began long before your birth and will continue long after you are gone. Each sister adds her voice to this stream for the years allotted to her, then falls silent, making way for new voices to take up the melody. Yet somehow you sense that nothing is truly lost, that all these songs of praise, offered in the hidden enclosure of the abbey, are gathered up and preserved in eternity, where time itself is transformed into music. Thank you for journeying with us through these gentle tales of medieval devotion. If the quiet rhythm of abbey life and the timeless beauty of sacred chant have brought you peace tonight, we would be honored to accompany you on future nights of rest. Please subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss these historical journeys into tranquility. Until we meet again in another story, may your dreams be peaceful and your sleep restorative, cradled in the echoing melodies of centuries past.